Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Slawomir Dobrzanski. I will be talking about piano competitions. I'll share with you some of my observations, my thoughts, some advice. Thank you so much for attending this talk. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. We will be using a PowerPoint, not to get lost in our where we are here in our talk. We're going to be talking about the history of competitions, about some issues, some problems with competitions, some disadvantages of competitions, and also a little advice how to prepare and maybe what to avoid, some issues that happen whether it's intentional or not. They do happen. They are sort of an aspect of the event that we need to be aware of. And also about advantages about competitions. Why is it good to be a part of a competition? Why is it good to have an experience like that? So let's proceed. The first aspect here is some history. We know that competitions took place already in ancient Greece more than 2,000 years ago. They were part of a religious worship, and usually they included poetry in music. But for our students, our piano students here, it is very important that they are aware or know about some competitions that happened already in 18th century between famous celebrated keyboard players of the time. The first one, in 1709, George Frederick Handel and Domenico Scarlatti competed against each other at the palace of Cardinal Ottoboni in Rome, and the cardinal declared a draw, but supposedly Scarlatti said that Handel was better as an organist. Well, I guess he meant also that he himself, Scarlatti, was better on the harpsichord. The next duel, because these were actually duels between two participants, was between Mozart and Clementi in front of the Austrian Emperor Joseph II. And the emperor declared Mozart the winner. And because Mozart had art and taste, and Clementi supposedly had only art. Clementi had a good memory of this event, and he was very impressed with Mozart. Mozart was not that impressed with Clementi at all. We do know that Beethoven competed against many pianists, such as Steibelt, Gelinek, and Wölfl, and they were all defeated, and I assume that all the keyboards were also defeated or destroyed during that event, because there are many reports of Beethoven physically destroying a piano because his fortissimo playing was a little too forceful for what the keyboard of that time could actually withstand. The most famous piano duel in history, and this is as far as close as we get to our contemporary piano, was the duel between Liszt and Sigismund Thalberg, and they competed at the residence of Countess Belgiojoso in Paris. And the Countess declared Thalberg the first pianist in the world, but also stated in the same statement that Liszt is unique. And press notice was given the following morning, more or less saying the same thing. For our students, and of course for for us, it's good to remember how many competitions there are and how many of them are really important. And of course, most of us know this. It's not that easy to do research on competitions, but it appears that the oldest music competition was the Naumburg competition in New York City that was created in 1926. And this competition does not exist anymore. The Chopin competition in Warsaw is an unusual kind of a competition because it is devoted entirely to one composer. And yes, there are competitions devoted to Bach or Schumann and Liszt. Chopin's competition at this point seems to be the oldest competition in existence. It started in 1927. And then we have competitions here listed that, some of them are just for the piano and others are, they every year they change their profile. And some competitions, it depends on the management. They sort of get out of fashion and others become more and more important. It all depends about the winners and their careers. At this point, Leeds and Clyburn and definitely Tchaikovsky is the leader of the music competitions. Why we hear less about Geneva or Queen Elizabeth. We used to hear much more. Then, I just found yesterday an article in New York Times from 2010, and it tells us, the changing situation in the music world, and especially in the piano world. You can see what's happening, and this is an article from 2010. So there were 5 piano competitions in 1945, 114 in 1990, and there are, which means there were, in 2010, 750 piano competitions. I guess they mean international piano competitions. And now, of course, it's likely that the number is above 1,000, especially if we add all the online piano competitions that even were created this year in 2020. So let's move on to the topic at hand, which is why is it good, why is it important, or why is it not so good to participate in a competition. Disadvantages of competitions. Students and parents are taught to prioritize winning over musical growth. What does it really mean? The question, what do I do to make this phrase more beautiful, is a different question than what do I do to play this phrase in a way so that I can win a competition. So in other words, what do I do to play better than my neighbor, rather than what do I do to express myself better on the piano? What do I do to become a better pianist? Next, students tend to focus their practice only on the competition repertoire, and you can. What happens is that if we have a competition to prepare, we will automatically practice this repertoire more, work on this repertoire more, and we will ignore, you say temporarily, but we'll have the things that actually need attention. And so basically we will try to expose or, feature what's good in my students playing, rather than, and we will try to hide some issues that we know there are some issues, some technical issues that need attention or musical, because we don't want this to be exposed or, so it really affects our thinking, how we plan, and usually we simply postpone important things for, well, the time after the competition. Parents and teachers often want their students to play repertoire that is as difficult as possible and as soon as possible. And we will talk about this a little more later. But yes, there is a certain pressure to play pieces that are more difficult. And in extreme cases, we see situations where the repertoire and the performer are totally mismatched. I personally do not see it as appropriate for a 12-year-old to play the Chopin's B-flat minor sonata with the funeral march. I think that there are some pieces that require certain maturity, require certain experiences that have to happen in life for the performer to be able to grasp and understand the emotional content of a particular composition. So you might argue that this is a good pressure, and we will talk about that later. Students and parents sometimes decide whether or not to continue study based on whether they win. Because of this, some teachers only accept students who have potential to win competitions. And well, you know, it is both for the teacher and for the parents is some sort of a measurement of success and, you know, confirmation that we made the right decision, that we sent our child to this and not the other teacher. Parents have very few ways to measure their child's success in, you know, taking music. And competitions are one of the ways. Oh, my child won the second prize, my child got an honorable mention. They must be making progress. But many parents, you know, and we have to realize that many parents are not musicians and they don't understand the way you know, musical progress is made. So for them, having that documentary evidence or the evidence in the form of trophies is very important. However, as I said, it creates a different philosophy in the studio, and teachers are also under pressure, right? And you know, we know that competitions are also based on luck. So sometimes these things can happen. And when, you know, parents expect the success and they might even quit studies, quit piano if, you know, if that particular grade, you know, and I see some grades in Kansas are amazingly talented, and you know, it's very difficult, and you know, it does not mean that the child is not making progress. It does not mean that the child was not good. It's just that that particular grade and age in Kansas has produced so many great players, and not all of them will receive a prize. Of course, there are some other, you know, let's say, results of, you know, too much competition. You know, when people think everything is about competition and competing and winning, then, of course, just like in sports, we start to think, oh, faster music wins, and slow pieces are not as important, you know, and also, you know, even in practical terms, you know, you play fast, and faster pieces are shorter, but have more notes in them, you know, so you're actually showing more work. And, you know, a slow adagio takes 5 minutes. And, you know, unless you play it like amazingly beautifully, then, you know, is it really worth your time? You're not really moving your fingers. You know, these are all thoughts that are they're not professional, but there is a certain mentality that develops around playing faster music. And there's a certain aspect of competitions that, you know, competitions often rely on showiness. Right, and so showiness, playing fast, and you know, the younger the person is, then the faster they play, and so on. We see already that spirit of competitiveness, you know, firmly being established in the psyche, and you know, the way we think about competition. So that might not be a good thing, because we neglect very often the very, very beautiful intimate things that, you know, and that many of us think that this is the essence of music. Anyway, competitions focus on the idea of perfection, but instead often end up promoting a certain uniformity, and that is very hard to escape that. When we observe some competition winners, how, you know, they play in a certain uniform way, you know, that this is a very solidly prepared and very rounded interpretation, but it's lacking individuality. And so competitions very often, of course not always, because there's so much talent out there, and very often great artists win, and you know, so, but there is a certain concern that competitions are rewarding, you know, the well-prepared, rounded up, but not very original. And you know, when we say original, we think controversial. Competitions don't do well with controversy, right? Competitions eliminate controversy, and very often already at the first early stages of a competition. So these are my sort of reactions, and each of these points has its counterpoint, and we will talk about that later. What happens during a competition? Well, judges usually separate the process of judging and comparing interpretations, you know, from the administrative rules of the competition. So they all arrive, and they are preoccupied with giving good feedback, with writing helpful comments, and you know, they have very little time to do this, and they worry less about the rules in terms of someone will explain to us the rules and what we are now supposed to decide. You know, the award giving is at the very end. You know, so which means that the focus is on listening, you know, and the focus on understanding and interpreting of the rules. It's the job of the organizer. And you know, judges are not there to interpret the rules of the competition. They are invited guests of the organizer. So if there is a disagreement or a problem or something is not clear, it is the organizer that happens to be sometimes in charge. And important decisions, that can lead to important decisions. So there is a, you know, a portion of the decision is the judges, and there is a certain interpretative aspect here on the side of the organizer, and it can go sometimes in a sort of strange direction. So to add to the complication, very often judges are not supposed to communicate with each other, not only during the performance, but also during the deliberations and the, you know, counting of the votes, which means that judges cannot talk to each other in case there is not only disagreement, but a lack of clarity in the rules. You know, so that can be a complication. I personally think that the judges not talking to each other is a very good idea. You know, and even one whisper from a judge from a neighboring judge can affect your thinking. And you know, someone says, "Oh, that was so bad," and immediately, you know, you stop listening. You wonder, what was so bad? What have I missed, right? So yes, not talking to each other is a very good idea, but it can lead to complications in case there is a lack of clarity on the side of the, you know, some lack of clarity in the rules. Sometimes judges go to extreme with not talking to each other about what happened, because when you meet someone 3 years later and you want to ask them what happened there, you know, they will be still not able to address the issue. I think that, you know, there should be some sort of a time period after which we should be free to just relax and ask each other what has really happened. But so sometimes when you see the results of a competition, and these results can be also a surprise to the judges. So we tend to think, oh, the judges decided. No, judges voted. These votes were counted, and the result was announced. Now, so sometimes the counting happens in front of the judges, and I find it personally strange when you have 10 judges and someone collects the votes, disappears, and 20 minutes later you hear the results and you're very surprised, and you have no right to ask anybody, any of your fellow judges, how did you vote? What has really happened here? So, but of course there are so many competitions and so many kinds of situations, that is just potentially what can happen. Well, one thing that people ask is how can you be a judge? Do you know all the pieces written for the piano? I don't know all the pieces written for the piano. There are many pieces I don't know, and I think it's actually good because I'm always happy to learn something more. But as an experienced listener, I can always comment on the technical aspect of your playing or the musical aspect of your playing, even if I don't know that particular composition. And please remember that compositions usually fall into stylistic category. If a given composition is called a poem, we would expect that it will be played in a poetic way, right? If the piece is called a ballad by an unknown composer, I would expect a narration, a narrative, a story that is being told. So, so it's, yes, on one hand, of course, the comments might not be as deep and detailed, but on the other hand, yes, musicians are able to comment on, experienced musicians on another person's playing. Let's move on. Some questions. Is the difficulty of the repertoire a consideration? And that we already talked about it, that we tend to think that it is, and I think to some degree it is. And so we have to be sort of aware that, yes, it's actually important to showcase what your student can do technically, rather than give them an easier piece, right? So yes, and but then there is this extreme about students playing pieces that are well above their both technical and artistic abilities, and because that particular teacher thought that difficult virtuoso repertoire will catch the judges' attention. And usually it's the other way. The judges are very, very adamantly protesting. Why you're playing this Mozart sonata? Why should be going back to sonatinas and so on? So, but the honest answer to that question is that yes, and parenthesis, I guess, unfortunately, a little bit, but there's a good pressure here to actually show your best, right? Should judges simply promote their own likes in regards to style and interpretation? And, I think that most judges are very open-minded, and because they hear on daily basis so many people and they see so many ways of playing the piano, and they have they can follow the musical logic and understand the musical logic. They might not agree with certain musical decisions, but they are definitely tolerant in terms of what's easiest for the judge is to give specific comments regarding the score, right? So, and I always tell to my students, if the piece, if it's printed there, forte, and what I'm hearing is mezzo piano, that will be the easiest thing to catch for the judge, right? And so judges, this is the easiest, they refer to the score, and the expectation from you as a performer, the first expectation is to respect the score. And so if that's the easy, we always sort of, that's the basic referral point for the judges to comment, to base their comments entirely relying on the score that you have given them for referral. So and so that's where the open-mindedness ends, right? Because the judges, also were trained to respect the score, and they are the ones who are supposed to establish and enforce professional standards. And part of their job is comparing your interpretation with what's printed in the score. What about the student who plays everything perfectly, but all of the ornaments seem incorrect? How do you judge that? What if the student plays one piece excellently, but all the other pieces not so well? That happens sometimes, and usually honorable mentions are reserved, depending how badly the other pieces were played. But this honorable mention for delivering this one special piece, special moment, that's my philosophy. Now, about the student that plays everything perfectly, but the ornaments, I would say ornaments might seem strange, right? And that happens. Oh, why are these ornaments so strange? I haven't heard them like that. And so you might want to comment that, I haven't heard the ornaments played like that. And there's a chance that someone just read an article. There was a recent discovery how to play these ornaments in that particular sonata. And again, I don't know everything, but I will just make a note that your ornaments seemed unusual. And are you sure? Have you checked the sources? Is this the correct way? I would not, indicate this is not what I'm used to. It must be wrong. That assumption, especially in the topic of ornaments, and we pianists usually assume that the harpsichordists know everything about ornaments, and we sort of know ornaments. So ornaments is a very tricky subject, but so I would question them and make a note that I did notice the unusual way, but I would not condemn them, just because I heard 20 recordings and these ornaments were performed differently. And when we hear something on a recording, it sort of legalizes what happens, right? And sort of, if this was played on the recording, that means this is the correct way. It might not be actually true. Should a talented student playing with great charisma and beautiful sound be penalized for their teacher's interpretative decisions? Okay, and that happens, of course. How we as judges have no right to suggest to the student to change a teacher, and that's one thing for sure. But we can suggest that the student listens to recordings, that the student listen to others, and then we can put some question marks. Are you sure you want to use so much pedal in your Bach fugue, right? And sort of like please re-examine the issue of why the adagio is so fast, while we know very well the student is 12 years old or 14 years old, and they have not made these decisions were made for them, right? So, but we cannot directly address the issue of bad interpretative decisions made by a teacher. We can question these decisions. Should a very good, solid performance that is not inspiring be considered for a prize rather than a student who has some flaws but plays with much more inspiration? And this, assuming that the student who plays with so much inspiration doesn't cross a certain line, right? But has some flaws, right? Because, you can play with inspiration, but you can be totally irresponsible. And then that automatically disqualifies you. But the solid, but not so inspiring versus the not so solid, but inspiring. That's different judges have a different relationship with inspiration. Many judges are skeptical about inspiration because they prefer professionalism and being responsible. I tend to always give someone something who is inspired because I value that energy, right? This energy will lead to good decisions, and you have to, but that person will not certainly be a winner. We think about winner as rather flawless in terms of preparation, right? Economic status of a particular student is sometimes revealed in the addition they bring to the competition. Yes, and this is a very difficult question, and it does happen. The moment someone brings a bad addition, you already know that likely they followed the bad addition, and they will play according to what's printed there, which might make a Chopin out of Mozart. Out of Bach, right? So but that this is the music for $3.99 that they found in a used books store, and they likely are not able to afford a better edition. How do I address this? Well, we have to understand that a music competition is a professional event, and it has to be somehow made clear in the comments that you have to use professional tools to participate in a professional event, right? You cannot use an electronic keyboard to prepare a beautiful Chopin nocturne. And the same, you cannot get to the bottom of what is the style of Bach if you use an edition that has pedal and all kinds of romantic additions like ritenutos, ritagandos, and so on. So the problem has to be addressed. It's not like the student brought this edition, so I have to now check if they followed this edition. However, this edition is terrible and should not be used anymore. And so we should encourage the student to get access, right, to good editions. We can say, well, why don't you become a member of your university's library? If the student is pre-college, for $20 you can get a library card at our university, and you can check out all these good editions, Bärenreiter and Händler, and so on and so on. So that's, we have to encourage students to use professional tools here. Let's move on. Judging is very exhausting. There is never enough time for comments. One needs to work out a personal system that works the best. And everybody has a system. Everybody takes notes on the side. I usually take my note in Polish so that no one can read them. And these notes include what the student looks like, and so that I can have memory of the performance. you have very little time to write, and you have to write legibly so that people can read it, and you yourself can read it, because if you're in a hurry, then and I personally don't find all these things that are printed very often on the page, like pedal, posture, helpful. I make my own categories. The most difficult group to judge are the youngest students, and yes, and there's lots of disoriented children in the room, and they need to be shown to the piano and so on. And sometimes these moments are helpful because the judge has more time to get organized, but the performances are extremely short, and there are many people in a group, let's say 15, and you have 15, 7-year-olds, each playing 2-3 minutes. That is extremely difficult to remember and to compare, right? So I find these groups the most challenging to judge. What's very important to remember, that for the judges, judges arrive in an unknown location, unknown concert hall. They hear an unknown instrument, unknown to them, and it takes a while. It takes about 3 participants to learn what the hall can do and what the piano can do. If the first person sounds mezzo piano, it's very hard to evaluate that. Is that the problem with the person? Is that the problem with the hall? Within 1 hour, it turns out some people can get as loud as mezzo forte. That means that there is an issue in this hall, right? Sometimes you arrive somewhere and the first participant plays really loud, and then the second one plays also really loud, and then when the 5th one plays softer, then there's a certain way of, is the average sound in this hall loud, right? So very difficult to assess the first performances. There is a research on this topic that says that people playing in the middle and closer to the end tend to win competitions. And there's an independent research, academic research, that was done in Europe. That's just the reality. Talking to participants and teachers after the competition. Yes, this is a particularly difficult moment for me. I don't have good memory for faces. So I have to imagine the person is on stage, you are in row 50, in the back of the stage, and you sort of can see the person not really well. Then it also happens that many pieces are the same. You have a group of 15 people, and well, let's say high school competition, and there's 15 people, and 8 of them played the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata or the Clair de Lune. Okay, so how do you now remember which Clair de Lune is talking to you right now? You have to make I take notes, so what the people look like, literally, what they're wearing, maybe, a red sweater, okay? And because people, for them, these 10 minutes on stage was the most important moment of the day. For you, they were one of the 25 people, or sometimes 40, that you have heard that day. It's a very difficult moment. Some teachers, ask you questions. You say, "Well, I like the playing of your student very much." That kind of statement can be understood. Oh, this judge voted for my student, so it must be the others that voted against him, and or her, and so on. So you have to also be very diplomatic, and and there's a potential for misunderstandings. especially when the judges are tired. So that moment is difficult, however necessary and important for the participants to talk to the judges and to get some further guidance about the playing. Okay, let's move on. Important advice. Attractiveness and variety in the repertoire. The decision what is going to be performed, what my student is going to play, it's very important. It is, first of all, it has to fit the personality of the student. It's we have to be careful not to give them music that is too difficult, but challenging enough so that they can work on this for many months, right? Sometimes I think that I admire the young students being able to play the same relatively short pieces for 2 months, 3 months to prepare for that one performance. But I'm talking mostly, what is most important is attractiveness also for the judges, for the judges in terms of combine fast pieces with lyrical pieces, and show a variety of piano sound, right? A pedal sound, or short articulation, precision, versus ringing, beautiful tone. So this is a very important decision and the first element of success. Personally, like when people include in the program one lesser known composition. Yes, if you can play Carlos Guastavino or Turina or Bacevich or Szymanowski or something like that, it stands out. You will be remembered. Or what that person that played Guastavino, and somehow that little moment is important. Well, let's not take more than the right amount of time for material that is lesser known, right? Because that gives the judges less certainty about making a decision. But it's a good way to stand out, and also to be excited about a discovery and sharing this discovery with others. Some judges look only for perfection. I don't think that many judges look for perfection, but there are some that expect total perfection. But I think it's very important, and it's good to think that judges are going to be extremely severe. I have to analyze my score. I have to make sure that my memory is solid. I have to make sure I, prepared, which means perform this repertoire a few times in front of people, because the judges are looking for perfection. They're really not looking for perfection in reality, but some do. But it's a good way of thinking. Make sure that judges receive the same edition of the music. Well, yes, because if you prepared from Handel but you gave them Bärenreiter, you might be surprised that the Bärenreiter has this different ending that was just recently discovered, but you never saw it. It's just an extreme example, but when you keep that clean edition for the judges and you practice from a different edition, that's just there might be. The judges will be commenting based on what you give them. Okay, also make sure that your copy is clean. Make sure that there are no comments from the teacher, because it's very distracting for the judges. If you see a copy where it says more pedal here, left hand more, crescendo, there's some question marks, exclamation marks, and we stop listening, and we all teach this music. And we start thinking, oh, I wonder what a crescendo would look like, would sound like in this. These are thoughts that we don't need when we want to assess your performance, right? So make sure the copy that you give to judges is completely clean, and it is the same edition that you were using in your preparation. Wrong notes in the most important melodic and thematic portions of the composition are definitely not acceptable. If you the main melodies, like the simplest language that I can use, and the main melodies have to be solid. if you have hesitations there, wrong notes there, it somehow stands out. Now in transitions, if there is little wrong note in in 716 notes, one note was not right, there's just, we automatically think this was an accident. This was like, so. However, if you are in a concerto competition and don't expect to win if you had a memory problem, because judges will not, allow someone that has shown a potential even for memory problems. They will not allow that person to perform with the orchestra. Well, take time between pieces. Many children are rushed. This is an unfamiliar territory. For some, this is their first competition. So they, feel awkward. They feel the atmosphere is stressful. And they tend to run, from one movement to another without taking much of a breath. So prepare how you're going to enter the room, how you're going to, say hello and thank you. Good manners are appreciated. Make eye contact, right? If you make eye contact, you will also be remembered. You acknowledge us, the people assessing your work. So that's very, very good to have in mind. Are online competitions a worthy substitute for live competitions? Well, the pandemic has, definitely caused an increase in online competitions, but I think that the online competitions now are also becoming live competitions, which is very good. Before it was send us, your link to YouTube, and we will let you know if you won or not, and we might send you some comments. I was very skeptical about this format. Now, this new format of live online competitions, when you actually can hear others, and especially when you can hear the finale, you hear the winners, you can learn something. So I think at this point, the live competitions, ironically, because of the pandemic, are becoming better and even worth doing. Benefits of competitions. We all learning new repertoire, and this is a deadline. Deadline, particularly, for pre-college students that do it without a jury, like the college students, that have to perform a jury at the end of the semester. Having a deadline, and in a competitive spirit is a good thing. By October 15th, I have to have the sonatina ready, which means then, we're talking here, I skip, we work on strategizing and planning. If I compete on October 15th, I think my sonatina has to be memorized at least a month in advance. So this kind of thinking is good. It's a completely transferable skill to other, activities in your life. If I want to be successful at this, I have to strategize and plan whatever is involved. Next thing, we learn how to perform under pressure, and this is good. Also transferable. If you're a good pianist in front of people, you likely are a good speaker. Not necessarily, but there's a chance that you are also a good public speaker. You're not scared of people. You're familiar with people sitting in a room looking at you. So these are good things. Not only for piano playing. That how was my memory? Is my memory affected by other people being present in this room? So we learn things about ourselves, and and then we know what to work on. We get feedback. Not only printed feedback, written feedback, but also we get feedback immediately after we perform. From our own experience, it gives us so much feedback. Develop goal-oriented practice. Learn from failure. Okay, and in some cases I say winning, as long as you are on the right track musically and technically, you're working towards the right goals. Losing is as important as winning. It's probably not good to be the winner all the time. It's good to be a loser because you can actually, first of all, experience what it feels. You start questioning yourself and why am I involved in this, and do I really want to continue? These are basic questions that occasionally need re-examination, right? And so on. So failure is a good thing in terms of it can make you stronger. It can help you strategize and plan your practicing better. If the issue is I'm not good, I'm not doing well under pressure, well, you need more experiences like that. And at this young age, this is a learning stage. All of it. Competitions are a learning stage. So people are able to really benefit from failure. Okay, get feedback and develop an ability to deal with different opinions. Okay, well, you play your adagio, and adagio, two judges say the tempo was perfect. I love the choice of your tempo. And one judge says, this is too slow. I was so bored, and that teaches you a lot, right? And first of all, reconsider. Maybe slower tempo is a good idea, right? But there always will be contradictory opinions. Even, if you're a professional, you play a concert for 300 people, 200 people will love your playing, 50 people will say it was a nice day, but it was okay. And there will be always 10 or something people that will say they didn't like it, they were not excited. This is wrong, some people will say. And, some people might be just, they might have been sitting in the wrong part of the hall where they barely can hear your playing. But contradictory opinions are part of what we do, and there are different reactions, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That means we are alive. We are not memorizing, a text and just saying it from memory, and then it's either good or bad. No, there's much more to it. Other things. Opportunity to listen to other participants, and this is a necessity. If it's possible, make sure your students hear other people, right? Don't only come for your 7-minute performance and go home and then return for the results. If you can hear others, it really helps you understand, and you yourself as a student, whether if you're 14-year-old or 12, will immediately learn how to compare. Oh, I think this one is better. It's cleaner. It's more exciting. I don't know why, but and you can also hear the pieces that you yourself were preparing, and that's even better, right? Even after the competition or in the intermissions, meet the students, talk to teachers, and if you like someone playing, ask them, how do you practice? How long do you practice every day? So this is so much we can learn. And the same for teachers. Now, great learning assessment tool for teachers. Yes, many teachers living further away from great metropolitan centers. They get feedback from judges who have some professional standing, and they take it very seriously. This is one of the few ways to see your students compare with others from many parts of the state. So this is a good thing, and we should all take this as an opportunity. And in general, I think that competitions, and this to summarize my talk here, are a necessary ingredient in music education today. And I'm saying ingredient as part of the experience. It's not like we live for competitions. We want the only students who will win competition. No, but we do want to make sure that a student, and each and every student, if possible, actually participates and has that experience, because it's a valuable experience, and we can make it a part of our larger, project for that student. Where do we see this student in 1 year, right? You can include the competition in your planning. So I hope that whatever I said was helpful. We're going to slowly wrap up here. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me over email. You can always, this is a recording, you can always back up, listen again. And of course, I will likely see you in 2-3 hours in a Zoom meeting this evening. So you can always ask me more questions. I'm trying to finish the screen sharing, and have a good evening, and please stay in touch. Bye-bye.